Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. I'm Juan Hidalgo. I'm the County Agricultural Commissioner. Uh, Today, we're going to officially release the values for the 2024 annual crop report. And today, I'm joined by leaders from the agricultural industry. We have Norm Groot, Executive Director for Farm Bureau, Chris Valadez, President for the Grower Shipper Association of California, Central Coast, and also Chris Christian from the California Strawberry Commission. She's the Senior Vice President. It gives me great pleasure to announce that the gross production value for the 2024 crop report was of $4.99 billion. That is just short of achieving the $5 billion mark this past year. The value shows a trend that we had seen the last couple of years. We had seen growth in agriculture when we look at the 2021 and 2022 crop reports. That growth took a step back in 2023 because of the flooding that we had, but it looks like we're back on track. The value this year of almost $5 billion is a 14.7 increase compared to last year's crop report. The number one commodity in Monterey County in 2024 were strawberries, topping the $1 billion gross production value. That is really incredible, quite an amazing historical achievement for our county. This is the first time in our county's history where we have a single commodity reaching the $1 billion gross production value. And that's an increase of 15% for strawberry production in our county compared to last year. Leaf lettuces follow closely behind with a value of $933 million. Head lettuce had a value of $596 million, followed by broccoli at $578 million, and cauliflower with a value of $228 million, which rounds off the top 5 commodities in our county. Celery, spinach, wine grapes, nursery stock and flowers, and livestock also commanded some really high values for our county. Monterey County is blessed with Mediterranean climate and really fertile soils that allow for the diverse production of over 100 different commodities here in our county, which makes our growers and our region really quite successful. Our county is renowned for its production of lettuces, broccoli, strawberries, and wine grapes, and the crop report demonstrates the importance of agriculture in our region as part of the overall agricultural production in California. The success of agriculture in our county is thanks to the more than 60,000 highly skilled agricultural workers who carefully harvest very delicate commodities throughout the growing season so that we can all enjoy them at the dinner table on a daily basis. While generally speaking, last year's crop report shows that most commodities saw some increases in values, and the weather was generally more typical for our region, which really helped to increase some of the values and yields that we saw last year. But wine grapes took a little bit of a step back. It was a challenging year for wine grapes. The marketplace was flooded with increased wine production, and there was reduced demand, which actually reduced the value of wine grapes by approximately 22%. So the value decreased from $152 million in 2024 compared to the $194 million we had noted in 2023. Some late season heat wave, if you remember, late summer, early fall also impacted some of the yields that we saw from wine grapes last year. And so yields were also reduced by about 20% for wine production last year. I think it is important to note that the values in the crop report are gross production values, and they don't take into account the cost for growers for labor, cooling, pest management on farms, marketing, for example. And then the other thing I want to point out is that the values also do not reflect the increasing regulatory cost incurred by growers from different programs that they have to comply with. For example, food safety is a very important regulatory program that all growers have to comply with here in California. And also water quality and sustainability are also key programs that continue to increase some of the costs that our growers see on a yearly basis. Lastly, the theme of the crop report this year focuses on technology and the innovations taking place to bring robotics and artificial intelligence to farms to find real world solutions to everyday problems. And so over the years, we're continuing to see the use of uh, robotics in the fields to be able to help growers be more efficient and effective at what they do on farms. Now I'd like to invite our industry leaders here today to make some comments on the crop report, and I would like to invite Executive Director Norm Groot to the podium.
Thank you, Juan. I'm Norm Groot. I'm the Executive Director of Monterey County Farm Bureau, and 1 billion in strawberries. That's an amazing number, and almost 5 billion in output here. Pretty amazing numbers, and it really shows the resilience of our agricultural community here, bouncing back from a pretty bad 23 when we had 2 disastrous floods. But it shows that we have a lot of strength in our diversity too, as you can see in the numbers of the different crops, up and down for some crops, but mostly up this year, which is really great to see. But it demonstrates also how important our food crops are to our nation's health and our overall food security across our country. But it's also not an indication that everything is well in the ag community. Costs of inputs continue to rise, much more so than even market pricing sometimes. And it's challenging now with the fluctuation in the tariffs and the uncertainty from day to day, what's going to happen in the global marketplace, but also understanding what that means for our domestic marketplace as we hopefully can replace some of those imports. But it is showing a significant downturn in our wine grape sector, partly due to changing consumer preferences, people drinking less wine, unfortunately, and then the oversupply that we saw in 2024. So we'll see how that works out in 2025 as we move forward in that particular sector. Labor remains a very costly part of the input of production of our crops, and immigration enforcement is presenting new challenges for our growers as we move forward through this season, trying to stabilize our field harvest crops as well as what we're doing agronomically. But overall, California makes farming and ranching very expensive to do here in this state and somewhat non-competitive against other states. Monterey County Farm Bureau commissioned a study from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo on the regulatory compliance costs that growers are having to manage through these days. And we found now that the average grower for lettuce is incurring $1,600 per acre in regulatory compliance costs for California, which amounts to about 12% of the crop input costs. And that makes it very expensive when you're competing with other states that have much lower thresholds for compliance. But despite these challenges, farmers and ranchers are finding a pathway to move forward and keep producing the products that are important to our nation's dinner tables every night. And part of that is due to ag tech and the way that we're changing how we're producing our crops, not only producing them, but also harvesting them. Salinas Valley is becoming an ag tech hub. We have our innovation center here in Salinas, and soon we will have Reservoir Farms out on Highway 68 as a demonstration for a lot of these new technologies that are coming to help improve our agronomics. Autonomous field equipment is here. We can see it work in other states and other parts of the country. Cal OSHA needs to improve the barriers and remove those barriers, for using these new technologies that can improve efficiency and lower the cost. So what that means is that Cal OSHA needs to change their regulations so we can use autonomous tractors and field equipment. So overall, while these numbers are positive, local farmers have many challenges that will ultimately change the way that we do things here, what we plant, and how we harvest it. So thanks to the Ag Commissioner for a stellar report this year. Appreciate the numbers as well as the production of the document itself. And it's really great to have positive numbers to talk about here. So next, I'm going to invite up Chris Valadez, who's president of the Grower Shipper Association of Central California. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Christopher Valadez, President and CEO of the Grower Shipper Association of Central California. It's my pleasure to be here today with the Ag Commissioner's Office and our colleagues from the agricultural community. Thought Norm did a fantastic job giving a very well-rounded overview of encapsulating kind of the ag footprint as it exists today, as well as I think the snapshot which is covered by the report looking at ag over the last year. Some additional, I think, economic perspectives I'd like to offer when you're looking at now crop groupings within the ag report, looking at last year, particularly the vegetable sector. Ag is resilient in this county. I think we're blessed and fortunate to have an amazing array of diverse crops, but high value crops in particular. And if you were to isolate the vegetable category of the overall total, it's approximately 70%. And so, the vegetable sector here in this county in particular is the foundation. It's the backstop for this county's economic wherewithal. And as you can see it reflected in the ag report. I also took a look at the data as it was released today, but because we don't have every county's data, the best available source I took was last year as an example. And if you looked at all the California county rankings, looking at top 10 from those at the highest over the $8 billion mark to those at least on the lower end of the top 10 at the $2 billion mark, and where Monterey County would exist around 4th or 5th within that overall list. Just vegetables alone, just the vegetable sector alone, so one commodity category grouping in this one county alone would come up 6th or 7th on that list, which is extremely impressive, but it also, I think, goes to re-emphasize just how valuable having a strong, healthy vegetable commodity sector is in this county, and particularly as it relates to the berry sector. I mean, vegetables aren't the only story. It's a very diverse county, but vegetables rotate with berries and other commodities as well. And so it's very important we have a mix of very diverse but very highly valuable crops here in this county. I think another analysis that I undertook, again, not having all counties' information as it relates to 2024, but just using what was recently released today, looking at last year's, to me, this really emphasized the importance of why Monterey County has the agricultural economic prowess that it has. It's amongst the highest value in per harvested acre. So on a per acre basis, its average value is well over $20,000 on a per acre basis, which puts it number one or number two. And it really goes back to high value commodities led by strawberries and a lot of the vegetable crops that you will see in the report that I'm talking about in the aggregate today. And if you're now comparing that, so what does that mean from a rankings list? That puts Monterey County 1 or 2, which would be 2 times or 200% higher than the average per acre value of crops in the highest counties like a Fresno Kern, which overall is over an $8 billion, close to $9 billion, but their per acre value is closer to $9,000 or $10,000. And so the Monterey County story and its story of resilience, I think, begins and ends with the fact that it is home, because of the climate and the soils, to the highest value acre crops. And when you're reflecting that in economics and on a per acre basis, Monterey County's economic prowess, I think, is quite frankly second to none, and it proves it out once you isolate the information on a per acre basis. It's first, it's second, it's up there. And so I think, our perspective moving forward and reflecting where we've been, as Norm said, we didn't have the floods. We didn't have, at least looking over the crop profile and its effects for last year economically, the aggressive pest and disease challenges that we did in prior years. And so because of weather, because of cultural practices, because of IPM practices, farm management practices, farmers are continuing to exercise and show that they're very resilient. We're looking forward, hopefully, to this time next year on what the values will be. But I think the bright story here is Monterey County's resiliency is backed up by the fact it has the highest value crops produced throughout the state and throughout the nation. And so I congratulate everyone that's a part of Monterey County agriculture, which isn't just representatives, the farmers, the farm workers. I think 1 of every 4, 1 of every 5, about a quarter of all the jobs in the county, from services, supply sector, you name it, are touched and make up the total agricultural economy that is so robust and resilient here in Monterey County. So it's quite a unique, remarkable story, and we're glad to be a part of it. So thank you. Next, and at least last on the list, I would like to introduce Chris Christian, Vice President of the California Strawberry Commission.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. I would also like to thank Juan and Chris and my esteemed colleague Norm for the opportunity to be here and speak with you all today. My name is Chris Christian. I'm Senior Vice President of the California Strawberry Commission, and I'm very proud to be here to represent all of our strawberry farmers in Monterey County. It was a record crop in terms of gross production value in 2024. It is important, as my colleagues reflected a little bit in their remarks, the rising costs, to remember the rising costs of growing food here, especially in the Central Coast of California. Of that, just over $1 billion, almost 990 million of that 1 billion goes back into the community here, providing jobs, purchasing services and goods that are critical to farming operations, and those goods and services are purchased from local companies. We employ a significant number of workers on the farm here statewide in California. California strawberry farming provides about 50,000 on-farm jobs. Those workers are critical. The overwhelming majority of those workers are field workers. They are responsible for cultivating and harvesting our crops. And as mentioned earlier, it is important we rely upon their skills here. I'd also like to reflect a little bit statewide on the value of strawberry production. Strawberries contribute more than $4.2 billion to California's economy. And that is all while growing strawberries on less than 1% of the state's farmland. Specific to Monterey County is our largest production county for strawberries in the state, reflecting the importance of our coastal climate. The Monterey Bay Canyon provides the best climate in the world for growing strawberries and is a key component of our success here. That concludes my remarks, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Norm, Christopher, and Chris, for your comments and insights into the crop report. Really appreciate it. I'd like to thank my staff, too, for their hard work and dedication, and all of our growers and our industry that really help to put together such a great report every year. Without their help and assistance, we wouldn't be able to have the data to be able to look at trends and the successes that we have here in our county's agriculture. With that being said, I'd like to open it up for questions. If anybody has any questions about the report, we're happy to help to address those questions. Yes.
This is more about you're looking into the next year and how tariffs will affect agriculture in Monterey County. Can we speak to that?
That's a little bit of a difficult question to answer because it seems like at the federal level, it's been back and forth on how the tariffs are going to play out. But I think maybe I'd like to invite Norm to maybe help to talk a little bit more about that and see what the forecast might look like for ag for us next year.
Thank you, Juan, for putting me in the hot seat here. I think it works on two sides with the tariffs. First, of course, we do export a fair amount of product to a number of different nations. The crop report does specifically note which nations and how much we're exporting. Because those tariffs are changing and because now Trump has announced that he is not going to postpone tariffs again, we might see some reality in how those exports are really going to be impacted. On the other side, the imports of the inputs for crops are significantly higher too due to tariffs. So that plays in the cost of production and how much fertilizer, chemicals, other inputs are costing at this point, including the packaging that we're using. So we will see an impact from tariffs. It just, at this point, is a little too early to determine exactly how much.
Quick question. In terms of the use of AI, would you maybe be able to speak as to maybe some areas, some companies that are implementing already the AI use, and what are some of their results in terms of maybe a decrease in their costs for production?
Yeah, I think the incorporation of artificial intelligence and using some of the robotics and some of the machinery in agriculture definitely has some really great and offers some really great opportunities for our county. I think our county has been a lead in, working with tech companies to incorporate some of those technologies here, which will then benefit other parts of our nation and even the world. We're already beginning to see some of that with drones. They have software and artificial intelligence that can help to identify portions of a field where maybe, they do different scans so they can see, okay, part of that field is looking like it needs more water or there's something wrong with the irrigation system. It can identify disease trends potentially, and so it can lead to more efficiency in how inputs are being used. If you have a part of a field where maybe it needs a little bit more fertilizer than other parts of the field, then a grower can focus on just those parts of the field to be able to do some of that work. And we're already beginning to see some of that. We have some of the laser weeding machines that incorporate technologies to be able to identify the colors, differentiate between lettuce and weeds in the field when they're doing thinning, for example, and also to control weeds. So a lot of that is really already playing out here, and it's just going to continue to grow as the technologies become better and better.
In terms of the potential workforce, are they maybe, you mentioned this efficiency, does this impact workforce in any sort of way? Maybe potential workers who may see AI implementation as a reduction of their potential jobs?
At this point, given the type of commodities that we grow here in Monterey County, these are very fragile commodities. I don't think that there's a machine at this point that can do the work that our skilled workers can do. Perhaps over time there will be efficiencies in that sector, but I think a lot of the focus right now has been on field scouting, weeding of some of the fields with some of these machines, which actually I don't think takes work away from agricultural workers. There's been a labor shortage for many years in our region, so that's just a way to for our growers to be able to use machinery to be able to pick up on some of the shortages in the workforce that we have, and being able to use more efficiently our skilled labor where it's needed the most. But I think that there's a lot of opportunities with agricultural technology. I think our growers also are looking out for their agricultural workers, and there's been programs with junior colleges throughout California that are implementing some additional education programs specifically for agricultural workers so they can take the skill sets that they know and be able to learn a little bit more about technology so that they can be better prepared to work with some of the technology that they may be seeing in the fields in the future. So I think our growers are really invested in continuing to do that. I think our growers recognize the importance of our workforce, and they will continue to play a big part in the success of our county's agriculture here.
This brings up a really good point of one of the questions I continuously get in automation is, are we going to be replacing our workers? And the example I'll use is we have an autonomous tractor working in the field. That driver may drive that tractor differently than what he is doing now sitting in the cab. So it's a matter of training and retraining these individuals to continue working in agriculture, not replacing them, but continuing to use their skill level. And I'll point out too, most farm workers have smartphones. They are tech savvy. They know how to move into different technologies. So we're not eliminating jobs. We're continuing to integrate them into this new technology that we have. And this again highlights that Cal OSHA needs to change the regulation so that we can use autonomous equipment in the fields and retrain those workers into new jobs.
Thank you. What are the challenges the ag businesses face in this presidential administration? We know that there's a lot of immigration fears, workers not showing for jobs, or what kind of challenges are you kind of observing now? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that has been a significant challenge for us here over the last several months. I think our county, has been a leader in making sure that our communities are informed of their rights. And this is all community members, including our agricultural workers, but also all of our businesses here in our county. So I think the steps that our county has taken to be able to talk about, some of the concerns that we're hearing from communities, making sure that they know their rights, making sure that they have access to resources that they can rely on, has made a big impact on hopefully helping to reduce some of the fears that we have been seeing throughout the nation, what we see in the news the last several weeks. So I think that's going to be helpful. I think our growers are also being very proactive in making sure that their employees have the information that they need. This is going to continue to be a challenge, unfortunately, until the federal administration decides, how they're going to be able to hopefully find some resolution that is helpful to support our communities, but also that is helpful to support our growers and our businesses, and to reduce any potential impacts that this can create on myself and you and all of us, because agricultural workers are the backbone of our agriculture in the county. So I think finding some real solutions is definitely is something that we really need. But Norm or Chris, I don't know if you had any additional comments, but it's going to be a challenge that we're going to have to continue to manage as things ebbs and flow based on the federal administration and some of their decisions. Chris?
Juan, you covered a lot of areas very well. Trying to tie this back to the crop report, right? Economics. It's our opinion that the encouraging sign of continuing to see growth from this economic indicator each and every year, give or take, on average, not always, but there's been growth over time, is, as Norm highlighted, we do have, this high expense profile with growing these commodities here, not only within the county, high value commodities and the costs and the inputs associated with that, but also the regulatory climate nationally, but in particularly the state of California. I mean, that disproportionately where we feel the highest burden is coming from is all the state imposed costs that just add economic pressure. So if you're not growing, right, you're either stabilizing or you're declining. And so you're under pressure. It's just what it is, to continue to grow, continue to become more efficient, continue to find, what are your breakthroughs in a way in order to maintain a yield, keep up with the cost, hopefully become, or on average over time, be profitable and sustain your agricultural operation, which I think on a net basis is great for this community because it continues to be a strong base for tens of thousands of jobs. But now you asked about, in particular, this administration and an outlook, and I think, it's been a whiplash of sorts, where, you've had comments about wanting to be, I would paraphrase, protective of the farmer, which I think goes back to, okay, well, what's the juxtaposition between immigration enforcement activities kind of everywhere all at once, yet being protective of the farmer and a workforce, some of which may be at risk if there is aggressive and broad sweeping immigration enforcement efforts. And so many of us have tried to, engage with our elected officials and others to help figure out, well, where is this going to land? What does that mean? Because it feels, at least in the court of public opinion, you're kind of on again, off again as it relates to just how protective or thoughtful are we going to be about the value of not only agriculture, but other highly labor intensive industries. Could be hospitality, it could be construction, it could be others in the services sector, where the president has commented, we want some stability, we want to be mindful and helpful to the employer. I think what we're going to see, and we've already seen this in part, but the story remains to be told, is there's going to be, I think, more pressure, maybe more opportunity, depending upon perspective, onto the employer in the agricultural sector to go towards H-2A, the guest worker visa program. The president has said it. They've just opened rulemaking, kind of pausing the last set of H-2A rules as it relates to particular areas and signaling they're going to commence new rulemaking in an attempt to make the program easier to use, more cost-effective to use, not as costly to use as it relates to the employer's cost. So in an area such as Monterey County, which for the state of California is already the highest, if not amongst the highest users of H-2A, at least comparatively speaking to other counties, I think that pressure is only going to increase, quite frankly, for our farm employers and the farm economy and our farm communities overall. It's going to have other kind of push-pull trade-offs as it relates to the availability of housing, the ease of creating new housing or more housing, policies at the county level, at the state level that may or may not facilitate that. And oh, by the way, even if overnight, if there was more aggressive immigration enforcement that severely displaced the agricultural workforce, the employer cannot flex into H-2A overnight to replace significant numbers of the work. It's just not a realistic near-term quick fix as it relates to the availability of the labor. You need to rely upon your domestic labor pool and our Monterey County resident for this conversation to continue to provide that stable labor base. And so I think our biggest challenge today is trying to connect these disparate dots of, if the president is saying he wants to be protective of the farm economy, which means not disrupting the business continuity of agriculture, we interpret that to mean, okay, they want to be largely protective of the ag workforce. Are they singularly meaning that only is H-2A, or is that H-2A plus? What we're saying is we welcome changes and opportunities to make the H-2A program a lot more usable for more employers should they choose to, I think, continue to supplement some of their labor force because of a labor deficiency. I think that's what the program is intended to do, and there are challenges that need to be overcome that we think the rulemaking that will be open will enable easier use of the program. That's a positive, but that's not the entirety of, I wouldn't call it the solution. I'd say the near-term opportunity. The solution is going to be something, congressionally speaking, I don't think we're close to that, anywhere close to that. And so we continue to look for opportunities with this administration to identify what are those mechanisms that would provide stability to, for this discussion, the Monterey County resident agricultural workforce, that 80+% of the workforce that isn't H-2A. That's, the residents that live in every one of our everyday communities here. That continues to be the challenge. And so for us, we work with our employers on, the do's and don'ts, all the legal requirements, helping their employees gain access to information. But at the end of the day, I think that near-term engagement is going to be very critical in being able to make gains in ease of use into the H-2A program while not shutting the door to the fact that that is only, again, for this county, that's only the 15 or 20% at best. That's not an overnight solution for the rest. We have to figure out how we're going to be protective within this administration to ensure, per the president's words, we are not being disruptive to the farm economy, farm country, and we can best enable business continuity. And so I don't think there's an easy answer, but we have to be careful, I think, on how we're approaching it from the farm employer community as well, because there's there's going to be a lot of things out there. We've seen how the transaction occurs. There's changing news cycles every 2 seconds based on social media posts or whatever else it might be. And so we have to be very careful to not only stay up with it, but to try to make sense and to be effective engagers with the administration and with our elected officials to ensure we're in position to ensure we can best protect through new policy ideas or outcomes. And so it's going to be complex, but I would ask everybody to be very attentive to the proposed changes that are likely to come to the H-2A program as a signal for what could be ahead.
Any other questions? Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it.